Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us here. I want to read you something. We're talking about Kim Davis in the Rowan County Clerk, and I want to read you something here from the Supreme Court. One of the more famous Supreme Court cases from the late '80s, early '90s that speaks to free exercise and how it is applied. And it's Employment Division v. Smith, and it's the famous case where the two. There were two employees. They got fired for using peyote. They're Native Americans. They used that in their rituals. They sued, saying you can't deny us unemployment benefits because of the Controlled Substances Act. That was a law of general applicability, blah, blah. Okay, I want to read you a portion of the majority opinion written by none other than my favorite, Justice Antonin Scalia himself, who, citing from Reynolds v. United States, says, In the context of the free exercise of religion does not allow a person to use a religious motivation as a reason not to obey such generally applicable laws. That's paraphrasing from the sort of summary of the case. Quote, to permit this would to make the professed doctrines of religious belief superior to the law of the land, and in effect, to permit every citizen to become a law unto himself. Thus, it goes on. That's exactly what we're trying to prevent. Because the issue here becomes, and here's a question. Given that, right? And this is what we're talking about here. This law of general applicability that says the law of the land can now exists to allow same-sex couples to get married. We had two, by my recollection, two presidents who were professed Quakers: Herbert Hoover, Richard Nixon. Right? One of the central doctrines of the Quaker faith, as I understand it, is strict pacifism. No violence. Do not assist in violence. Do not materially do anything in which violence is going to happen. A lot of the conscientious objector litigation from the 60s and 70s were Quakers who refused to go into the selective service or even sign up for it when they turned 18 because it violated their religious belief to go and fight in a war that they didn't believe they could. Now, obviously, Herbert Hoover and Richard Nixon did not, espouse that principle as the commander-in-chief of the military. But what if they did? Would they be upholding their role as an elected official? Would they be upholding the Constitution to defend the United States and the Constitution of the United States? Would they be an effective commander-in-chief, or should they either resign or potentially be impeached? What if Richard Nixon saying, I'm a Quaker? Now, he obviously never did this, but I'm a Quaker, I believe in pacifism, I believe in nonviolence, and I'm not going to be the president of a country that practices violence. I'm going to disband the military completely. It's within my power to do so. Or he claimed that it's within his power to do so. He wouldn't be fit to serve in that office, would he?
No. And one of the things that the right has been bringing up is that she swore an oath to God that is going to uphold it. I want to just read a bit of it right here. It's section 228. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the U.S., the Constitution of the Commonwealth, of this Commonwealth, and be faithful and true to the Commonwealth of Kentucky as long as I continue a citizen thereof, and I will faithfully execute to the best of my ability, blah, blah, blah. Then it goes on to say, I haven't shot anybody, killed anybody, the rest of that. And then at the end it says, so help me God. Well, the bottom line is people don't quite understand what so help me God means. It doesn't mean she's swearing to God. What it stands is short for a phrase, so may God help me at the judgment day if I speak true, but if I speak false, then may he withdraw his help from me. That's not swearing to God. That's saying, listen, I'm willing to face eternal damnation if I don't follow through on this. So the bottom line is even if there was a passage in there where she swore to God, that wouldn't be constitutional anyway. No. That would be a complete breach of the separation of church and state clause easily. And
also, if they required her to swear like that to God, that would violate the religious test provision in, I believe, Article 5. Yeah. I can't remember. There's no religious test for office in this country.
So there isn't a religious test. So that's something that the right keeps banging away on. The second thing is let's face it, she works for Caesar. And that's how I view it. And a lot of people disagree about, give unto Caesar. Well, if you read the Bible and you read it from cover to cover and you look at that, it isn't just taxation he's talking about. It's the roads that you use. It's everything else. You have to pay the tolls, all that. And the bottom line is, Caesar isn't the only law of the land. It isn't only the law of social and political values, but it certainly is the law of the bureaucracy. And that's part of the problem. And we were talking a little bit about it during the break. One, we're going to bat for a person that has actively sought to defeat Republicans on a repeated basis. That's how you get to be in a position like she's in. She's an elected Democratic official. Two, she doesn't believe anything else that the Republican Party has to say. She hasn't said anything, but obviously, being a Democratic elected official, she's not going to toe too much of the Republican Party line. And three, when you're working for Caesar, you have to follow Caesar's rule. And as you said in the break, what people do is they retire from that position and they say, I can no longer serve my duty here because I do not believe in this.
It violates my conscience.
It violates my conscience. Just the conscience objector. Mm-hmm. That's what we just talked about.
And the free exercise clause has classically been held to protect what you believe. Not always. In some instances, yes, but not always what you do. There is no one, right, left, or center, or even this district court judge that has told her, you have to stop believing that gay marriage is wrong. No one has said that. No one has said, we're going to have you sit in jail until you accept the fact that gay marriage is okay, that you should believe that it's okay. No one has said anything like that. What they've said is, you got to do your job, and you have to follow through with what the law says, and you're not doing that, so we're going to make sure that you do, or we're going to make sure that the law is carried out if you refuse to do so. That's the difference. And just to be completely thorough and finish up the point about being a law in yourself, blah, blah, blah. In response to Employment Division v. Smith, the United States government, signed by Bill Clinton, passed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, I believe in 1993, that said that any law that any law that could affect the exercise of religious liberty was given strict scrutiny. You've heard all about those. These are the laws that say you can't discriminate against someone's religion, so that something like, hey, if I'm going to use peyote, I get to do that now if I have a sincere religious belief. You can't stop me unless it furthers a compelling government interest and it's the least restrictive means. Okay, that was applied to the states and then was held to be unconstitutional. So Employment v. Smith, even though it's been somewhat abrogated in the federal context, not so much in the state context. I looked it up. Kentucky has its own state version of this law. But what people don't understand, and you see this time and time again with free speech, with the religious clauses, with the Second Amendment, with the Fourth Amendment, any fundamental right that we have in this country, fundamental right does not mean completely inexorable, you have the right to do that. You don't have the complete inexorable right to possess a handgun, for example, because every single fundamental right comes with two questions. If there's a law that infringes on that right, does that law further a compelling government interest? And does that law, is that law narrowly tailored so it's the least restrictive possible? So there are always exceptions to fundamental rights. And what the court is saying in these actions against her, saying, look, we have a compelling interest to further the constitutional rights of same-sex couples. We don't believe that you're we're not infringing on the exercising of your religious beliefs because we're not telling you what you should or shouldn't do, or what you should or shouldn't believe, I should say. And we have to do this because you won't give us any other option. And so I think it passes muster both on the federal constitutional grounds and the state legislative ground.
All right. We're going to continue our discussion about Kim Davis, the Rowan County, Kentucky clerk. That has gotten herself in the middle of a big firestorm. There's a couple of questions that Jason and Joe want me to ask you.
Oh, yeah.
So after the break, we'll be talking more about that, then probably sliding into the refugee crisis going on in Europe. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We want to thank all of our sponsors, Bertrosian Associates, Lubinas Law Firm, Halo Capital at Des Moines Interest Rates, Des Moines Anesthesia PC at 515-574-6442. I have a new blog out, so please go hit docandlefty.com. It should be posted. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back right after this break.